In this video, I'll be showing you how to sew a palazzo trouser. In the previous video, we drafted a basic trouser block and I demonstrated how you can alter that pattern to achieve the pattern for a palazzo trouser. So we'll be starting from that point, transferring the pattern to fabric and moving along to the sewing process. So if you're yet to watch that tutorial, I will drop a link for it above and in the description box. Check it out before you watch this one. By the way, if you like this top I paired it with, there's also a tutorial for this on the channel. I will drop a link in the description box for this as well. Welcome to Kema Freak. My name is Kemi Umurugbe. I am your designer, teacher, illustrator. So like I mentioned, we drafted a pattern for this already, and I'll start by transferring these patterns to fabric and adding the necessary allowance. For both the front and back pattern, I'll be adding ½ an inch along the inseam, 1 inch along the outseam, then additional 1.5 inches at the hem for folding. And for the pockets, I have ½ an inch everywhere except from the side. That's the part of it going into the side seam, the out seam rather. So we have these two pieces. For the band, we have ½ an inch everywhere and then 1 inch along the side. Okay, I just want this to correspond with what we have on the main pattern. The bands were cut in twos and unfold with fusible interfacing pressed onto it already. Now to kickstart the sewing process, we'll be starting with the pocket, and I picked up the pocket facing here and I'll be sewing our pocket curve. So I placed right side facing the right side of the main fabric, and we'll be stitching by the ½ an inch seam allowance we have right there. Now here's what we have. After this step, you can go ahead to either trim off the seam allowance or you notch. I think I prefer notching actually, but I trimmed mine. So notching will just still give it that fullness around that part, personal opinion anyways. So once that is done, you flip over the facing, then go give it a press, okay, and then we'll top stitch. I have given this a press, by the way. Then you top stitch by about 1/4 of an inch just to give it that definition along the pocket. So stitch neatly around the curve for the pocket. Now you can see how much difference this makes on the pocket curve. After this process, you can go ahead and place the other part of the pocket on this and stitch these two together by ½ an inch along the side. So in this case, you're placing the right side over the right side of the pocket. So stitch from this point all round to the top of the pocket, leaving open the pocket curve. Okay, that part needs to be opened for the hand to slip into the pocket. Now you can choose to make use of a French seam for this, but I am just sewing straight and I'll go ahead to overlock once I'm through. So now this is what I have on my pocket. I'll go ahead and repeat the process for the other pocket. Next step is to stitch the crotch region together. That's the center back and the center front. The center front is the other center front and the center back to the other center back by ½ an inch. I hope you understand what I mean. It was at this stage I realized I needed to put my dart because I didn't add addition to the band, okay, to make up for the darts that I didn't take out. If you watch the tutorial for the pattern, you understand what I mean. So the next step I'll be doing here is to sew the inseam together. So place the crotch region over the other, align that center seam properly, and then stitch by ½ an inch from the crotch down to the hem of the trouser by ½ an inch. So this is called the inseam. Normally I will overlock my pieces immediately after cutting before I go ahead to sew, but if you're working with a soft fabric, please sew before you overlock, okay, because that will just help your fabric maintain its regular structure. It won't disturb the structure of the fabric. Okay, So I'll go ahead to overlock because I'm through with that seam. Okay, and next we'll be sewing the out seam by 1 inch. Remember that the seam allowance on the outer part of the trouser is 1 inch, so I'll go ahead and sew, but on the right side I won't completely sew it closed because we intend to add a zipper to that side of the trouser. So I'll just stop about 8 inches below the waistline. Now that is done here, so I'll just use pins to stabilize the pockets, okay, so that it balances well with the rest of the trouser, because we want to stitch the band now. Okay, so having placed pins on my trouser, I'll pick up my band. This is the front part of this band, and I'll just put the right side over the right side of the band facing. Like I said, the bands were cut in twos, so I'll put the right side over the right side and stitch close the top of the band by 1/2 inch. That's our seam allowance at that part. So that is done here. You can go ahead to notch that part because it is slightly curvy. I repeated the process for the back band as well, and I'll turn it over, go give it a very good press so it lays flat on the right side. Now here is the band for the front and this is the band for the back. Now I want to stitch these two bands together along one side, leaving open the other side for the zipper, and I'll be stitching these two together by the seam allowance along that side, which is 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, our band is now a single piece. You can see, go ahead and press again, and then we'll be stitching this onto the main trouser by 1/2 inch, not the two. Okay, I'm working with only one side, that's the main fabric. They are the same fabric anyways, but one is serving as the facing while the other is the main, the main fabric. So I'll be stitching from the zip side through the front to the side, to the other side rather, to the center back to where we started from by 1/2 inch, and make sure that the side seam aligns with that of the main trouser. And here is my dart sewn already. Now I'll be fixing the zipper on the side we left open, and when you do that, ensure that you stop at the top of the band, which is the junction between the facing and the main band. Okay, let's just be calling it that. And so that is done here. Now I'll be adding a 1 inch elastic to the band, and I initially did it on just one side of the band, so I placed it on the band. Make sure that the elastic is smaller than the width of the back waistline, okay, just so it stretches very well. Then stretch it and go ahead to stitch at the top and bottom of the band. I like the effect it gave that side of the band, and that made me go ahead to stitch it again on the right side of the band. That's the right part you'll be seeing on the outside. I just like this wavy effect. Just take a look at it, maybe you understand what I mean. Look at this. So I love this effect. So I went ahead to stitch it on the main part of the band I'll be showing on the outside, just so I can see this thing going on on the outside. Then now at the center back, go ahead to turn your facing to close up that part of the zip. Okay, so stitch close to the zip just to make that side look neat. When you do that, fold in the seam allowance like so, and then go ahead to fold in the rest of the seam allowance, hold it with pin, go give it a good press, then you top stitch the second part of the band. I like to do this process from the right side so that I can see what I'm doing and ensure that it looks neat. You have two options: either you top stitch on the band so that we can see the seam neatly on the band, or you stitch between the junction, that seam at the junction of the band and the main fabric. I just hope you understand what I mean. So I'll go ahead and do that now and come show you what we have. So this is my band. I went for the other option that doesn't allow you to see the seam on the outside, and this is the outcome. Are you seeing that? Great. So the last step is to go ahead and fold the hem. I made use of just 1.5 inch allowance, but I didn't like the length, so I just used 1 inch fold. I folded it in, gave it a good press, held with pin, and I went ahead to stitch. And this is our palazzo pants or palazzo trouser. Guys, it looks so good, exactly what I had in mind, the fullness and everything. I love it. Please go ahead and replicate this. Tag Kemafreak underscore on Instagram so that we can see your own version of this. Thank you for watching. Bye.